So 20 years ago, in 2005, at the ancient age of 34, I left my job at design and innovation firm IDEO and started my first company. Now, the inspiration for this company came from Thanksgiving. Every year at Thanksgiving, 30 of my in-laws would congregate at one of their houses in suburban Detroit, 4-bedroom, 1.5-bath house, for several days and do nothing but play games and drink and play more games. And this was board games, card games, video games, and everybody was having so much fun together. And then they'd leave and nobody would have any fun together for a year, and then they'd come back again. And I kept thinking, like, this is, the internet is here. Can't we do something about this? Can there be a way to play games with each other online while we're physically separate? And I know this sounds obvious right now, but in 2005, it was really easy to play games online by yourself or with random strangers, but playing with your friends and family was actually close to impossible. So I started a company, and I called the company Bunch Ball. When little kids play soccer, somebody kicks the ball, they all follow it in a mob, they call that bunch ball. And that was kind of the idea, is that you take your friends and family with you from game to game to game. And I was in the Silicon Valley, surrounded by entrepreneurs. This is like the heyday of Web 2.0. So MySpace, Facebook, YouTube, Dig, Blogger, like all this stuff's exploding all around me. My neighbors are entrepreneurs, the waiters are entrepreneurs, going to VC parties all the time. I'm like, I'm a smart guy, I'm here in Silicon Valley, I can figure this out, I can play this game, and I can win. So I'm gonna fast forward 10 years and say, I did not win. After 10 years and tens of millions of dollars raised, the company was bought by a private equity firm, and it wasn't a great outcome for anybody, and I was exhausted. And I learned a lot in that journey, that kind of like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And so I'll share some of the things that I learned. So the first thing is, as a startup founder, you have one job, product market fit, right? I'm sure you've all heard this ad nauseum, but I just want to reinforce it. And product market fit is when the market is pulling your product instead of you pushing it at them. And I've spent years pushing product at the market. I know exactly what that feels like. It feels like you're in amber, like you're in the woolly mammoth in the tar pit. Everything is hard. You're pushing everything uphill. And when you have product market fit, you have built something so compelling to your target market that they're actively pulling it as fast as you can provide it, or as fast as you can service it. And you can definitely feel that difference. And so you have to do this. This is your one job in life as a startup founder. And I didn't totally understand this as a first-time startup founder. I thought my job was to come up with the idea for the company and the product, and then to build it, and to convince people to join my company, and to convince investors to invest in my company, and to sell this genius vision that I'd had, and it was none of that. It was really about to build the thing that the market wanted. And so I often think about startups, now that I've learned this lesson, as learning machines. Your whole job is to be creating hypotheses, testing them as quickly and as cheaply as you can, iterating, and then doing it again and again and again until you either succeed or fail. And at the very beginning, all those hypotheses are in your head. And it's great. Like, living in your head is like the best place in the world to live, right? Because like you can do no wrong in your head. All your ideas are genius, and they all work out in thought land. As quickly as you can, you want to get out of thought land and get something into the hands of real users. Get it out of your head and into a thing. And there's often this shock at that point in time. I had this shock. You release this product, and the world kind of collectively yawns. And you're going like, but it's genius, it's brilliant, it solves all these things, and the world doesn't care. And it doesn't care for all these reasons that you didn't think about in thought land. So you get that product out there, and now you have a prototype. When I worked at IDEO, one of their maxims there is never go to a meeting without a prototype. Right? It gives the client something to think with. It's a tool to think with. It gives them something to react to and say more of this, less of this, no, this is completely wrong, as opposed to the blank sheet of paper. And so now that you have this prototype out there in the world, your job is to iterate with that prototype. Again, hypothesize, iterate, pivot if you need to, rebuild things, and keep building on that prototype and being a learning machine. Oftentimes in companies, and this happened at my company at Bunch Ball, we had CEOs come in that thought, oh, we need to make money now. Revenue is the #1 most important thing. Let's scale a sales team. If you haven't found product market fit, what is the point in scaling a sales team? And you're just burning money, you're making a bunch of people unhappy, and shortening your runway. And so in this case, early stage startup, be the learning machine, constantly testing and refining your hypotheses. I often think about this as like you're building a building. Every time you do one of these tests, you're moving up another floor, and you can see more of the surrounding landscape, the context. You can see better, what are my customers doing? What is the market doing? What is the competition doing? Because you're learning every single time you're moving up. And so you just keep doing that until you have a good enough view that you can decide, yes, there is an opportunity here, or maybe no, there isn't. The question often comes up about what do you test first? I have all these different things I could test. I could test if you look at this graph, I could test my business model and whether I have a feasible business, the viability of my technology. I could be testing, do I have a good interface and user desirability? It can be very tempting to want to test the easy things first. I am guilty of doing this all the time. And then testing the things that you're good at first. I am good at the technology bubble here. I like building things. That's like my happy place. Thinking about like cold calling people is my sad place. And so I don't think about business stuff. And I tended to want to do the technology things first. But really that's like completely the wrong order, right? The right order is you stack rank the risks in terms of like what is the most critical to your business, and you work on those ones first, as hard and as painful as they are, because if you cannot eliminate that risk, nothing downstream matters. And so it's really imperative that you do that. And just to share a story from Bunchball here, I remember very clearly working with the team, 24/7 to like get the first release of the product out and thinking, okay, we're gonna get this thing out the door. I'm gonna be 90% of the way there, and then the last 10% will be selling it, and we'll be good, I'm golden. And then, that sinking feeling when I realized after we'd put the product out there and nothing happened, that I was actually only 10% of the way there, and the other 90% was actually getting anybody to care. Distribution is like, I think, one of the most important things in any startup, right? We all know great products that have gone nowhere because they haven't had good distribution, and mediocre products that have done incredibly well because they've had great distribution. So this is the S-curve of success or doom, depending on where you are on this. So the S-curve of success is you work for a while in the kind of the flat area, you're doing a bunch of stuff, and then at some point, your business inflects. Some magic happens, and all of a sudden, your hockey sticking up, and then at some point, it levels out again, but hopefully you've got the next thing, and then you hockey stick up again and again and again, and you're just like, you're on the way to the moon. The S-curve of doom is you are stuck down here for who knows how long or forever, because you don't know. Here's like the brutal thing about companies and about startups. You have no idea what's going to cause that inflection to happen. It could be some new customer segment like magically finds your product. It could be a competitor just got acquired and all of a sudden everybody's hungry for like what you have to offer. It could be some government regulation, some new technology. It could be Taylor Swift posts on Instagram about your stuff. Like, who knows? Like, you have no idea what's actually going to cause that inflection point. Because if everybody knew what caused the inflection points in their businesses, everybody would have successful businesses, right? Clearly, that's not what's happening. A lot of, like 99% of startups fail. They never get out of this zombie mode down below. And so you don't know what's going to cause that. Like, a really good case study. OpenAI, company I'm sure many of you in here have heard of, right? Between 2018 and 2022, they released GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3, and GPT 3.5. And nobody cared. Nobody knew who OpenAI was. It didn't matter. Then they released ChatGPT, and they didn't think this was going to be a big deal. They called this a low-key research preview. They didn't bother telling their board of directors they were launching it. It was so like low-key. And they were just like in the middle of some staff meeting, oh yeah, we're launching this thing. And they were like, you look at like the senior leaders of OpenAI, and they were kind of like, we didn't think anybody was going to use this thing. This thing was making up answers and all this stuff. And then kaboom, like it just explodes, right? They had no idea. And yet this one thing caught fire, and now like trillions of dollars are going into this market. And so you just don't know. Like, I don't know, you don't know, nobody knows anything, right? This is a famous quote from William Goldman, the guy who wrote The Princess Bride and a bunch of other famous movies, and he wrote it about Hollywood. And Hollywood's very similar to startups, right? You've got the biggest director, you've got the best actors, you've got the biggest budget, you've spent like a ton of money on marketing, and the movie flops. And then you've got all the exact opposites in the movie succeeds, right? Why? Nobody knows, right? And if nobody knows, like, what can you do? Like, you're going like, oh my God, like, I don't know, what do I do now? The whole thing now is like, be the learning machine. You gotta like increase your odds of success by getting as many reps and iterations in, as trying as many things as possible, by talking to as many people as possible. You have to increase your surface area for luck and try to get that inflection to happen. So it's often easy to ascribe genius to successful entrepreneurs. Like everybody looks at Sam Altman right now. It's like, dude's a genius, right? Like again, they had no idea that ChatGPT was going to be so big. And so much of it actually comes down to timing and luck. Like, because you don't know what's going to cause these things. So case in point, at Bunchball, social gaming in 2005, we spent 2 years going to all the social networks. And this was the area of social network proliferation. You know, they were brand new. It was kind of like in the early days, there was like a ton of search engines, right? It wasn't just like Google and Bing. It was Alta Vista and Hotspot and Dogpile and Excite. In the early days of social networks, you had MySpace and High5 and Bebo and Facebook, but also Catster and Dogster, right? You had all these social networks. And we were out pitching to all these guys like, hey, you have this amazing graph of friends and family, add games on top of it, it will be the killer app for your social networks. And nobody believed us, and nobody cared. And so we were going nowhere. We were on that flatline bottom of the S-curve for 2 years. And so then, as the CEO of the company, I have to make a decision. Do we continue going on this path that seems to have like no end in sight, or do we pivot to something else? And in the process of building this social gaming platform, we had integrated all these game mechanics into it, things like points and levels and leaderboards and teams and achievements or badges. And we'd been amazed at how powerful they were at motivating gameplay behavior. And then we tried using them outside of gameplay. Like, can we motivate them to get like salespeople to sell more, or contact center agents to like get better scores and things like that, loyalty programs. And we found that it worked. We were kind of amazed. We're like, whoa, we've got this like little motivation engine here that game developers have known about for years, but outsiders don't. Can we take this and can we turn this into a product, a new market opportunity, and go after it? So that was kind of the decision that we had to make then. Like, do we continue on this market that we believed in for 2 years, but has shown no signs of life, or do we pivot to this new one that we think could be really big? This is where there's this phrase by futurist Paul Sappho that I really like: strong opinions weakly held. And he uses it in forecasting, but I think it's really useful in this scenario as well, which is you're never going to have perfect data. You're never going to have all the information. So using the data that you have right now, combined with your intuition about things, what is this strong opinion that you can form about the future, about what's going to happen, about what you should do? But hold that weekly, which means constantly be looking for new data to come in and challenge those assumptions and be willing to revise them and revisit them. And I think this is like a really powerful thing to do. So at that point in time, with the strong opinion weakly held of, you know, social gaming is going nowhere and we have this potential big opportunity, I made the decision to, yes, let's go ahead and we're going to pivot. So then, 6 months later, Facebook released their platform, and they called us up like a couple days beforehand and said, hey, you guys have been bugging us for 2 years. We now have this platform thing. Do you want to put some games on it for our release? And I'm like, sure. So I spent 2 days. I like built the integration. They opened up their platform. Things exploded. Like, our servers were melting. We scrambled for days just to like keep this stuff up. And so now, I'm like, okay, what do we do now, right? Now, all of a sudden, we have validation that this thing that we believed for 2 years, but that was going nowhere, was right. That games are a killer app on these social networks. At the same time, I've just spent 6 months convincing myself, convincing my team, convincing our investors that that was dead and that we should move on to this bright, new, shiny thing, gamification. Like, hard decision, right? And this comes down to this thing, Robert Cialdini, he's a professor and psychologist who wrote a book called Influence. And in it, he talks about this thing called commitment and consistency. And this is basically, human nature is, you know, for society to work, for all of us to interact with each other and trust each other, we need to be committed consistent with our commitments and with our statements to each other, right? So, the opposite of that is being two-faced or being a flip-flopper. These are the way people treat people that aren't consistent with their commitments. And so we will often do a lot of mental gymnastics and twist ourselves into pretzels in order to be consistent with a prior decision that we've made. Because we've made that decision, and then we've layered a whole bunch of other decisions and points of view and beliefs on top of that. And that's exactly what I had done. Like, we made the decision to pivot to gamification, and then I had all these layers of justification on top of that. And then even if that underlying first decision goes away or new data comes in, right, the strong opinion weakly held, that should change everything, it doesn't. You've built so much of a structure on top of it, it kind of psychologically and psychically hurts to make that change. And this happens all the time in everyday life. It's happening, all around the world right now. It happened to me back here. And so the answer was no, we didn't pivot. We stayed with gamification. And we should not have, right? I should have gone back. And the reason why is because the market always wins. If you look at this chart, you'll see I've got columns for team, product, market, and then what is your outcome? And what you can see here is that it doesn't matter how good your team is or how good your product is. If you have a bad market, you're dead. It doesn't matter. And if you have a good market, even with the most mediocre team and the most mediocre product, you actually have a chance at success. And that if you've got a good team or a good product, you can kill it, right? And in this case, we now had sign of life on the social gaming market. We could see that there was something there. Did it have longevity? Were we going to be able to make money? Who knows? But at least there was a market there, and there was a platform that we could build on, which was Facebook. Gamification wasn't a market. It wasn't a thing. We invented it out of whole cloth. And so there was no sign of life yet. We were taking a giant risk that there was a market that could be created there, and we didn't. And so out of this social gaming thing, billion-dollar companies like Zynga emerged, and gamification ended up going nowhere. And so this was a big miss on my part. But to that point about creating new markets, don't do it. Don't ever do it. Small company, big company, just don't do it, right? When you're creating a new market, people don't know what the thing is. Gamification at that point in time, nobody knew what it was. So we had to spend all our time being evangelical and educational and not actually selling. And not only in sales was it a problem, but also product. If you're building the next CRM, the next social network, you can basically say, I'm going to do it like this, but better in these ways. And you've got you have a prototype, a tool to think with that you can build on top of. But we just had a blank white sheet of paper. Nobody had built a gamification product before. What should this thing even do? That made it even harder. Stated another way, always think about evolution. How do you frame what you're doing in terms of stuff that people already know and as an evolution of that, so that way they can understand it, they have a budget for it, all those kinds of things. Because if you create a new market, nobody's got budget. You're going after innovation or emerging technologies budgets, versus revolution, which is something completely new, in which case you have to do everything I just said. The second thing, I'm sure many of you have heard about painkillers versus vitamins, right? When I have a headache, I want painkillers. And there is urgency around me getting that painkiller, and there is immediate relief from that painkiller. And so that is if you have a product that is a painkiller, that has your customer, your market has an urgent need, and it provides them some relief, you are in great shape. But a lot of products are vitamins. And vitamins are there's no urgency around taking my vitamins. And the benefit to them is at some future point, maybe I'm healthier, I don't know. How do I measure this stuff, right? And a lot of products are vitamins. But even if you're a vitamin product, Bunchball was a vitamin product, even if you're a vitamin product, you can frame it as a painkiller. And that is your one job in selling this thing, which is to use all the data that you can to figure out how can you tell your customers a story about how they're missing opportunities, about how their competitors are going to kill them, whatever. You take them into the pit of despair, and then you position your painkiller, your vitamin, as the painkiller that will solve their particular problem. And then finally, self-inflicted injuries. I think at Bunchball, there came a time when all the senior engineers in my company wanted to rebuild our core platform. They were we built this thing really fast, it's really brittle, we're not going to be able to move as fast going forward. If we take 3 months out right now and we rebuild this thing in a much better way, then we'll increase our velocity going forward. And I, being an idiot, was just yes, of course. Like, who doesn't want more velocity, right? And then, of course, it doesn't take 3 months, it takes 6 months. And in that 6 months, are we learning machines? Are we able to iterate on our product and try things to get product market fit? No, we're like dead in the water, product-wise. Such a bad decision for a pre-product market fit company. One, I mean, I look at code all day now, and every time I see some code that I wrote that's kind of garbage, and I'm like, I should rewrite that again, and like, nope, not today. Doesn't matter. I am PMF, it doesn't matter. And I don't even think we were unusual, right? I think most startups die from self-inflicted injuries rather than competition or anything else. So I have some video of a week in my life from Bunchball. It's kind of painful to look at, and it's kind of grainy because it's from like 20 years ago, but I wanted to just give you like a quick snippet of it. So this is Monday. Okay. And then I thought things were going good, and then okay. Then Wednesday, okay. Things were definitely looking good on Thursday, and then, okay. And then finally, Friday, okay. Yeah. Anyway, welcome to Startup World, which is you're on the 0-yard line, you've got a football field full of rakes ahead of you, and good luck, right? Okay. Okay, so after 10 years, I had 3 kids, I had written a book, I had thought about this company 24/7, worked myself to the bone, I had hit every rake on that football field, and the company was sold. I took a year, worked part-time, and recharged the rest of the time. And then after a year, I decided like I should get a job. And I went and I wanted the pendulum to swing the complete other way, right? I didn't want the weight of the whole company on my shoulders. I wanted to be a tiny little cog in a big machine, and even if that big machine ground my tiny little cog into bits, it would keep rolling on, and it didn't matter. And so I interviewed at a bunch of big tech companies in Silicon Valley and ended up taking a job at Google. So some of the interesting things I learned at Google. My first big presentation, I've been working with this team on this product, vision, that we wanted to sell for a new consumer electronics product. And I knew, like we had this really great vision, and I needed like a 20-minute presentation to get this vision across. And I knew that if we didn't get that 20 minutes, that if we got interrupted at the beginning and people got derailed, like we were just gonna lose and we weren't gonna get our product across the finish line. And this was a team where the leaders were notorious for doing that. You wouldn't get past bullet 1 of slide 1 before they would start grilling you. And so I took the calculated risk, and this wasn't a popular decision on the team, but it was one that I thought was useful or valuable enough to do because we had such high stakes, to frame this whole thing as I just walked up there on presentation day, didn't introduce myself, and I just pretended I was my manager giving the launch presentation 1 year in the future at Google's I/O conference. And they let me get through the whole 20 minutes. It was astounding. And they even applauded at the end, as if I was actually giving the presentation. And the reason this worked is because I time traveled with them. I took them 1 year into the future and showed them the future. And I also took them out of like this room where they were kind of a pack of hungry wolves ready to tear me down, and into the audience at Google I/O listening to this launch presentation. And this time travel technique is so useful. Like Amazon kind of famously uses the press release exercise, where before you build a product, before you write a single line of code, you write the press release for that product from the future, right? And it's an amazingly clarifying exercise because it forces you to think through, at that point in time, what are my customers going to care about? Some other time travel techniques that people use, one is the pre-mortem. So you fast forward to the future and you assume your product has failed. What were the potential causes of that failure? Looking from the future to the past. And then you come back and you go, okay, how do I actually mitigate all those? And then backcasting, which is you go forward to the future and you assume that your product has been successful. What needed to have happened? What were the necessary preconditions for that success? Now that I'm back in real time, how do I like make my roadmap to get me through those preconditions? So all these things super useful to do. And then this was the product that ended up out of that presentation. This is the Google Nest Hub. And so if you guys know like Google Homes and Alexas, it was that but with the screen. So a smart speaker with the screen. Now, Think about how we could have sold this thing. We could say, this is the world's best digital picture frame. That's an evolutionary message, right? Everybody knows what a picture frame is. People know what digital photo frames is. People take lots of photos. Or you could say, this is a smart display. What's a smart display? Why do I need a smart display? What are the things a smart display could do? That is the revolutionary message. What do you think Google went with? They went with the smart display, right? Like the Nest marketing team hated the idea of like this thing just being reduced to a digital photo frame, and so they loved the assistant and all the things this could do, and so they went with a revolutionary method, and I think lost a lot of potential sales. And then razors. So when you're making complicated decisions in startups or big companies, there are often a number of considerations that you need to think about. And oftentimes there are so many of them, and they're so intertwined that they form a knot that's really hard to figure out. How do I unravel this thing and make this decision? And the idea of a razor is a really sharp knife that you can use to cut right through that knot to help you with your decision making. And it's the set of principles that you believe in for your product, for your ideal customer, for your marketing, whatever it is, often in the form of a decision tree that can help you make that decision if you articulate it really clearly and get everybody on your team on board. And so I use these all the time at Google to help figure out, like, should we move forward in certain markets? Should we build certain products? And then the last thing I'll talk about from Google was the thing I learned about big companies, which is when you're a small company, everybody trusts each other, everybody knows each other, there's all this transparency, you work really fast, it's amazing. As companies get bigger, you don't know everybody, more people want to get put in the loop, so you've got this coordination tax, and then people lose trust in each other, so they start instituting processes to help cover for that loss of trust. And processes never go away, they only get more and more added, so that over time you've got this enormous cruft of process and coordination tax, till at the end of the day, 90% of your day seems to be work about work, and 10% seems to be work, which is unfortunate, and kind of how my time at Google ended, with me feeling kind of that way. So when layoffs came in early 2024, I was more relieved than upset, because then finally I could go back to being 100% work. Now, let's take a quick sidebar. How did I end up in Northwest Arkansas? I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, in the Silicon Valley. I worked for Google out there. I actually moved out here while still working for Google. And my in-laws moved here in 1997 and thought they were going to do 2 years here and then leave, do their tour of duty. And then they loved it and they stayed. So we've been visiting every year. And then after several years of visiting and seeing kind of the amazing nature of this place, we decided to move here. When I moved here, I knew nothing about the entrepreneurial ecosystem that was going on here, or the university. And I was amazed and surprised at all the activity that was going on. I got myself up early one Wednesday morning and went to a 1 Million Cups event, introduced myself to Toby Teeter, who was there giving a presentation, and he connected me with Catherine Carlisle, who then connected me with Sarah Goforth and with Darian Harris, and then like boom, it kind of fractaled out. And I've been amazed at how much is going on here. I mean, you've got all the stuff that OEI is doing and NBD, all the stuff the university is doing in general, spaces like the Collaborative, Startup Village, Onward. You've got Startup Junkie, you've got Arise, you've got Investors, you've got Startup NWA and Onward HQ, like all this great stuff happening in this area. And so, and a community that is super supportive and really tight-knit, which is really fun to be a part of. So what better place than to start kind of phase 3, which is as a solopreneur, which is what I'm doing right now. So when I talk to startup teams, I often say that like the best pitches are the ones that feel like your product is inevitable. It's going to happen. And it feels like a freight train barreling down. And that freight train is like some, it's government regulation, it's some new changes in the market, consumer behavior, some new technology. This thing is coming at us, and you have one of 3 options. One is get obliterated by that freight train, the second is miss that train, and then the third is hitch a ride with me, and we're gonna catch that train together. And now clearly the train that's like about to obliterate us all, unless we figure out what to do, is generative AI right now. When I was at Google, in my last role there is when ChatGPT came out. And when it first exploded, at first I was kind of like, neat toy, people are writing poetry about their friends and stuff with this. But then the more I thought about the ways it could be used in our work at Google, the more I realized that hey, there's actually some business value here. So when I left Google, I started this company called Ask Steve. And the idea here is basically a chatbot in a separate window isn't the end state for how we should be using AI at work and just to get our day-to-day lives done. There's better ways to build one-click AI tools and make them available to me wherever I'm working, whether I'm in LinkedIn or Docs or Excel or Sheets or Salesforce or whatever. Just always have that stuff right there by my side. It's like my personal co-pilot. And so that's the product I've been building. And I'm trying to do it differently this time. Like last time at Bunchball, venture-backed company, got the staff up to I can't even remember, 70 or 100, raised tens of millions of dollars. This time I'm like, if nobody knows anything, then I'm going to lean into nobody knowing anything and do everything the wrong way. So I'm going to fund this thing myself. I don't want to go raise venture capital. I don't want to give away ownership and control of the company. I am going to keep the coordination tax of this company at 0, which means it's going to be just me by myself. I'm going to make a very generous free plan because I want as many people to benefit from this amazing AI technology as possible, and ideally I can figure out a way to make a living off it later. And then my goal isn't to make millions or billions. The goal is work 2 hours a day and make a living if I can. Now, right now I'm failing at both those goals. I'm working 12 hours a day and making no money, but signs are good. Stay tuned. Follow me on LinkedIn and you can see where I end up on this journey. So 1 year ago, at the ancient age of 53, I started my second company. The AI space is booming. I'm here in Northwest Arkansas with this great ecosystem. I can play this game and I can win. We'll see. And my job, I've got one job. I'm a learning machine. I got to find PMF. And even though I know all these things that I've told you, I sometimes don't follow them because I know that giving advice is much easier than living it. And when you're going through this, it's hard often to do these things. And I also know that this is the dilemma of being an entrepreneur, right? The one wolf says, you see something that other people don't. And the other one is you're delusional. And the truth is, you're both. Right? This is what startup entrepreneurs are. You're delusional. And whether you win or lose is going to depend on some piece of luck about that inflection point that you don't know. So on the topic of AI, just real quick, I'll talk about a couple of things because I use AI all day, every day. Copilot is my new best friend. The amount of speed that I'm able to get stuff done with is insane now. As a mediocre coder, I haven't been a software engineer by trade for many, many years. But now, when we used to think about building product, you'd think okay, I need to do a lot of research before I actually do the building because the building takes so much work and costs so much. But now it's almost what if it's faster just to build the thing than it is to do the research about whether I should build the thing? And that's kind of the state that I'm in right now. I'm actually able to move so fast and have so much leverage that I can do these things. The surprising thing about AI is how much confidence it's given me in coding. So I wanted to build a mobile app for a side project and using a framework I'd never used before. In the past, this would not have happened. The amount of effort to learn the new technologies in order to build this app would have outweighed easily the amount of value that I thought I was going to get out of it. And so this idea would have just stayed in my head. But having used AI for the last year, I'm I can jump into this, and the AI will help guide me through it. It'll help give me answers, and I'll learn just by virtue of interacting with it. And that's turned out to be the case. And so now I'm confident that I can jump into any tech stack or anything I don't know, basically jumping off the cliff without the parachute and knowing that the AI will save me before I hit the ground. And then finally, I was at a local AI meetup recently. And one of the attendees was a TA of computer science at a school, and they were bemoaning the fact that a lot of the students were turning in excellent homework and then failing on the tests, right? Because they were using ChatGPT or whatever to generate the answers, but then didn't learning the concepts. And his reaction to that was, I'm not going to use AI at all in anything I'm doing. I'm like, okay, well, that's an interesting point of view. So you're going to have these like classes of people, right? You're going to have the artisans who handcraft like bespoke, small batch code, and it's beautiful, but they're really, really slow. And then you're going to have these like vibe coders on the other end who are just like chatting with ChatGPT, saying like, hey, make me an app that does this, and they'll be able to get like 80% of their work done. And most of, like a good percentage of the time, they'll be just fine. Like the thing will work. It's that last 20% if they want to like make little tweaks or there's something wrong that they're going to kind of fail at. But that 20% number is shrinking all the time. But I think the people that are going to have the most advantage are the cyborgs, the ones that know how to use the best tools available to them, understand the fundamentals, but use those tools like AI incredibly well. Those people are going to be unstoppable, right? They're going to be working kind of like I am. Like I feel like a cyborg right now. I was at an event for one of my kids the other day. I was working during the session, and they had blocked GitHub Copilot, which is like where my AI help was coming from, and it felt like I had lost a limb, right? I am so used to this right now. So I think the cyborgs are going to win the day. Okay, so why do all this, right? Like why I could have a cushy job doing work about work, and why am I subjecting myself to startups? It's because like many of you, I have like an undeniable urge to build and to create. There's a vision of a possible future burning in my mind's eye that I feel compelled to get out there into the world. And from nothing you make something, and that something has 1,000 of your decisions in it that manifest like your belief about the world, your point of view, your craft. And you put that out there, and you hope that people appreciate it. And you hope that people find value in it, and you hope that it makes a difference in the world. So congratulations to all the teams that are here, and good luck, and thank you all.